Yeah, thank you very much. Can you hear me? Well,
yes.
Yeah, thank you. Great. So I have not prepared the slides, but I'm happy to. I think it would be great if I somehow continue the story that I started during my introduction for you to better understand how these disruptive technologies movement evolved since some years and how it is supported and how the adoption is going on. So as mentioned, together with our colleagues and Dr. Anton Galenovich, who unfortunately passed away, and Andrea knew him and even met him in Geneva. So he was a very big scientist and economist in terms of, continuing the knowledge of the Austrian economic school of transactional costs and bridging this concept with new digital technologies such as blockchain. So as you know, one of the main problems in the climate finance market is the accountability of impact and trust between the players who issue and buy green securities, green assets, such as green bonds or carbon credits or some other green financial instruments. And Dr. Galenovich came up with an idea to provide some kind of a more transparent, more reliable framework that could enable direct peer-to-peer communication with these stakeholders, and what is very important, to measure and account and attribute the impact to those who contributed to the creation of this impact. And together with him and some other colleagues, we realized that blockchain technology, which is a transparent and reliable database that actually records transactions, including financial transactions and other information, which is a kind of a new level in the databases science, can really serve here as some kind of a basic infrastructure, and those financial assets can be issued on the basis of those records that were made directly to blockchain. And so we started to build this kind of an infrastructure on an open source basis, so everybody could reach it, and every member of this market can benefit from using this infrastructure. And also here we implemented not only blockchain, this registry, but also smart contracts, which are also kind of a useful feature of blockchain technology, and which currently provides a pre-programmed contract. So it's full analog of a paper contract in a digital form, written in the form of code. So with this, we pioneered with the world's first carbon credit transaction, which originated from the solar power project in Mauritius on blockchain. And what we did is we recorded that those voluntary carbon credits, they were transferred from the centralized registry, which exists on the market, to a decentralized registry on the blockchain, public blockchain, and then they were sold from the French trader group to our Russian carbon fund. So here we showed how the technology works. This transaction, which was cross-border, it took really several minutes, and all the information was really transparent. So where the carbon credits came from, who verified them, who verified, for example, their cancellation in the centralized registry and their transfer to the decentralized registry, and buyers and sellers. So everything is open, and you can see it, and everybody can see it from any computer, and no participant can change it. So this was really acknowledged by the UN, by the World Bank. We were invited to showcase this experience to various conferences, including the United Nations Climate Conference, COP in Bonn. And there we met a lot of some other people who experimented with blockchain technology, including Masamba Tioe, who is head of the Department of Sustainable Development Mechanisms of the Paris Agreement. And together with this group, we realized that indeed there is an understanding that disruptive technologies can really bring value to this market, and UNFCCC supports it. And kind of we united to form the Climate Chain Coalition. This is the first global association which is devoted to implementation and research of disruptive technologies for the climate action, and not only blockchain, but all sorts of other technologies. And that happened back in 2017. And when we came to various market members at the World Bank conferences, tried to explain the benefits, then we quickly realized that not all of the market members really want the disruption. This is also another problem with new technologies, yes. Because those carbon markets, climate finance, is quite a conservative market. Some of its segments is not growing. It's really fragmented, and there is clear oligopoly on this market. So the main actors, they actually didn't want any disruption to sustain their business models. And some people thought we're kind of just crazy guys, engineers, IT people that want to bring some unnecessary new stuff to this market. But yeah, but times, passed, and during these 3 years we made more experiments with solar power, for example, because we tried to connect to the registry, to the blockchain registry, direct measurements of the power generation and direct measurements of the impact that is made, calculated directly and reported, and use this data to issue finance instruments to bring more capital flows to the solar power industry, for example. And we made an experiment with the power plant in Chile, where we connected the smart sensors that measured the energy output directly to this blockchain registry, and issued renewable energy credits based on this information, in alignment with IREC standard, which is, you probably know, kind of a widespread standard. And by the way, IREC standard really looks very deeply into blockchain technology, and their officials state that this technology is the next technological level, and that IREC standard encourages implementation of these kinds of innovative technologies. And now there are many companies that develop this kind of renewable energy credits on blockchain, such as Energy Web Foundation, for example. And they all work in cooperation with IREC standard to provide, the verification of the standard. Because another problem of the blockchain, it's a problem of what you put into blockchain, because blockchain itself is immutable and you cannot change the data. But you should check or double check what you put there, because if you put faulty information, then it will exist there forever, and it will not be really good. So you still need a physical human auditor to see whether the sensors are working properly and whether the project is meeting standards, for example. But we frankly think that it's not for a long time, and that actually computers and AI can do this work for the auditor and check whether the sensors are working properly or not, based on algorithms of their usual work and so on, some other algorithms. Yeah. So
Alexei, just let me intervene. I think what is very important as well to understand in the project of Alexei and Anton, who unfortunately Galenovic, who left us last year. By the way, last physical meeting we had in Geneva, and the first time I met Anton was halfway between Geneva and Lausanne, Roger. But what was quite important as well, and unfortunately, our friend Nicola Nigli, who's a little bit the Mr. Sustainability from Geneva, couldn't make it, because Geneva is right now on the way to make the bridge between modern technology like blockchain and sustainable investment. And what is extremely important here is, and now I make a reference on this morning's session when we had very important members from all over the world, particularly as well from Mali, from Africa. We need to show them as well their possibility as well to help them, because their forests, they do some service.
Yes, but Andre, maybe we give Alexei the chance to finish his presentation.
Yes, just let me
go to Africa right now.
No, I don't want to go on. I don't want to go to Africa. But the reason why I mention that is the company of Alexei and Anton, they use as well blockchain to give some carbon credits to forest plantation in Papua New Guinea. Sounds a little bit strange, but I think there it's as well carbon credits could help as well to support a renewable energy project, but as well other projects. That was just a short.
Yeah, thanks, Andre. So I just want to, in my presentation, want to give you a bigger picture and how this all scene evolved. So I want not only mention our project, but also in the Climate Change Coalition, we now have more than 200 members from more than 50 countries, and UNFCCC officially supports Climate Change Coalition, and their head of the department is a co-chair. And each day, each week, more people are joining from the project side, from the investor side, and academia side, and so on, from many, many countries. Yesterday, there was a woman who runs an NGO in Kenya doing projects in terms of fuel-efficient cooking stoves. She just joined Climate Change Coalition, and a lot of people around the globe in developing countries, they need new tools, new resources to reach their kind of donors, right? And those who are willing to invest or who are willing to support, and not only provide them a kind of a beautiful certificate, but maybe part of the cash flow of the revenue stream or the impact results that they also can capitalize. But to provide this value chain of climate action, we need not only blockchain. And what I want to say is it's not a single silver bullet, right? And there is no single silver bullet, and blockchain is not a silver bullet. So to provide this long value chain, you need more tools, and you also need basic infrastructure and standards. And this is what we're now focusing on in the Climate Change Coalition. And it is very important that these standards and approaches should be kind of open source, really, and open for the public and transparent to also match the spirit of blockchain, but also to provide this kind of value to the people around the globe. And another example, what Climate Change Coalition is doing, there is a Dutch group who originally come from the realty space, and they are working with the Dutch register to provide object identification, buildings identification on blockchain, kind of a common registry where all the properties, essential properties of buildings can be found by everyone and cannot be altered. And in the Climate Change Coalition, they're providing their approach and methodology to jointly develop a global unique object identification infrastructure, which also could be useful for example, for solar power projects. Because when somebody is willing to invest, an investor, then he needs to know whether the project developer really holds the rights for this project kind of site, right? That the project site really matches the properties in the documents, and this could be checked, for example, using satellites. If the project boundary really matches the project description in the design document. And it brings also more clarity. And when the investor invests in this project, then he wants to somehow monitor his portfolio and see what is the energy output, what is the CO2 reductions. And now this could be made in real time. For example, when we presented our platform for impact measurement and investment during the last COP UN Climate Summit in Madrid, there was a project by EBRD and by some very well-known Swiss group, South Pole. They are developing a dashboard for the portfolio of renewable energy projects for the EBRD group. And exactly the same purpose, because the portfolio is big and they want to see, the investor wants to see what's happening with the portfolio, what is the energy output, analyze this data and see maybe what measures could be done to better manage the portfolio, these projects, and to increase the energy output, to increase the impact. So this is another example how this all can be done together. And maybe to finalize, I can tell you as a person who develops and promotes this kind of technologies for complicated climate finance markets that are sometimes very political, that have those complicated market structures. This year, together with my fellow members of the Climate Change Coalition, we see that, you know, the adoption before the crisis, but I think the crisis will even accelerate it, because we see how digital technologies really help to fight the crisis and its consequences. And a lot of people, including UN and Europe, are saying that we need to use this time to transform our economic and social models, and digital technologies is a key enabler. But before the crisis, we participated in some very encouraging events in Brussels, which was called Blockchain for the Green Deal, and also a very encouraging event in Berlin, which was titled something like Digital as Sustainable Development Finance, Connecting the Dots. And this event was, those two events were held by some official structures with participation of European authorities. For example, Werner Hoyer, who is the president of the European Investment Bank, and he made some very good, clear statements that European Investment Bank right now needs to embrace digital technologies, marry them with the climate finance, and become a digital climate bank. That's what he actually said during this event in Berlin. And this is not only, you know, kind of statements that we frequently see from bureaucrats, but also there are real use cases, projects by such banks as KfW, for example, in Africa with blockchain, and some other banks like BBVA Bank that issued internally the green bond on blockchain to provide seamless measurement and somehow connect the coupon payments of the bond with the impact performance. And this is actually what UNFCCC is now thinking about. They are designing new approaches to somehow deal with the greenwashing that is also growing on the green finance market. And those technologies can really bring transparency, traceability of impact, enabled peer-to-peer communication, excluding unnecessary intermediaries, bringing climate finance to those areas that were not covered before, to the underbanked people and project, significantly lowering the transactional costs and costs of the carbon projects, climate projects, and so on. Because if you dealt with it, you probably know that you have to fill in tons of papers, receive verification, determination, and all this stuff, you know, to just issue those instruments. Now we're entering the era where this is more accessible. We're democratizing this market and helping to breach UN Sustainable Development Goals investment gap, which is assessed by OECD as 2.5 trillion at minimum. So maybe, yeah, at this point, I will end my presentation.
Thank you, Alexei. I think this was very useful for all of us, because this is a world, or part of the digital world, we have not been looking in very carefully. I do have a very fundamental question. I understand blockchain, which means that all participants in a blockchain network have basically all information. And I think this works very well when we are talking about 100 or 1,000 people. But can you imagine distributing energy to millions of people based on blockchain? Because the needed computing power would explode. You know, at the end of the day, we need all the world's energy to power the computers to make blockchain with 1 billion people. So do you really think the blockchain approach is suitable to connect consumers, for instance, of electricity, rather than only to be a model for limited entities, you know, where you have hundreds of entities or so, so that the computing needs are staying limited? Do you really believe blockchain can be a technology for a huge number of consumers?
This is a good question, and frequently asked at the blockchain sessions regarding sustainability and CleanTech. The answer is that you know, the maturity and development of the technology, because of course the first prototypes, the first concepts of this technology implementation for energy market, for other purposes, for finance, were really carbon intensive, and a lot of computational power were needed to provide this proof of work type of consensus verification of these transactions. But now there are new generation of solutions entering into market that don't have this problem with carbon footprint, and also that are providing interoperability. As any technology like solar power, for example, you remember then the times in 80s where people said that it will never be cheaper than coal, than gas, and so on. So it's just people told that, academics, very respected people told that it's impossible, right? But now we see that, you know, the speed of progress, technical progress, you know, the speed of development of the IT infrastructure and hardware is increasing exponentially. And this year and even last year, you could see the new generation of blockchain technologies that have less minuses compared to their predecessors, right? So this is not only my opinion, and it is also opinion, for example, of the UN task force on UN Secretary General's task force on digital SDG finance, which will end its work in July and provide their final report on the limitations, pluses and minuses of technology, maturity issues. And also European Union, which has the DG Connect and EBTCI, which is something like European blockchain something infrastructure, which is official part of the European Union structure, which deals exactly with these issues in terms of a research scoping. But now they're finally starting to make real implementations. So if you want to use this kind of technologies, if you want to be somehow connected to the Green Deal programs and investments, it's very good time to start scoping these opportunities and making the pilots. And if you're interested in all this, I can share in comments here our recent publication, which is the Digital SDG Finance Bulletin. And there we try to describe the whole space, the whole scene, the actors, and in the end provide many links to the reports, such as by the Asian Development Bank or the World Bank or some other guys like UN Secretary General Task Force, for you to study this, to look into that and see what's happening. And by the way, in Germany, in Switzerland, the technological scene is very active, and we can see some really good ongoing pilots in terms of the smart grids, energy trading, and so on and so on.
Okay, I see, Roger, you wanted to comment. Or not? Then otherwise,
yes. I'm asking myself if it's if there is in the broad public an interest for such technology. I exactly see that it's very interesting for a company managing project of CO2 compensation or making an electrical trade in a real time, or storage on the power to gas, and then again to electricity. All this I see, but for the broad public is not interesting. They want to have electricity when they need. They want to pay it easily once in the month and not every day, and they don't want to interest themselves for this. We see this even on the rooftop photovoltaic, was very popular in Switzerland. In the first 3 months, they look at their production and consumption and make some optimization and then forget about it. So I am, in my with my experience, I have some distrust in IT innovation on the sector, because IT innovation is a matter of 2 or 3 years, and energy production is a matter of 30, 40 years investment. And there is a gap, and it's a lot of energy of financial energy, intellectual energy is focused on the IT innovation, because it's easy on short run. But the problem of innovation is long run and financing it in the long run, for me. And therefore, I see some gap. Maybe we can close the gap at some extent in using the excedent of wind, of photovoltaics like this, to group them and then to put them in a carbon capture or in a power to X like this. But the practical utility of this innovation, I have some doubt. Also because with too many information kills the information.
Yeah, well, but it is a secure way. But I just was skeptical whether it can be really rolled out on a broad area. Andre, you were already intervening a minute ago. How is your opinion about blockchain development?
Well, I'm stunned. Don't forget, I'm just a simple lawyer. So first, I'm challenged as well by the new possibilities that we as lawyers have as well, with the smart contracts. And I'm as well quite challenged because, well, most of the time, well, you need lawyers and notaries, and I think for us, a lot of things are going to change, because what is the key element of blockchain? Well, that is trust. That we don't need any longer, because we can trust the structure as such. So it's going to be a real revolution for all of us and my colleagues. But on the other hand side, and that was one of the reasons why I mentioned as well these points that are mentally quite far away. I must admit, when Anton came to us and said, "Hey, I've got my friends in Papua New Guinea," I thought, well, what has Papua New Guinea here to do with this? But it's so important, and that was one of the reasons why I mentioned Africa. When we talked about this, about the needs as well of Africa this morning, there's a huge need that they develop, and they're going to leapfrog us. If you go to Africa,
and you really think they need blockchain technology to have a village power? You know, I don't see this at all in Africa, because in Africa, the basic energy needs are so simple, and we are lucky to have a financing system based on their mobile phone, you know, because the mobile phone has to be paid, then you can pay for electricity. So how in the world would you implement blockchain technology in Africa? I don't see this at all.
Well, I think, well, you know, I'm afraid of holistic approaches. And very often what I realize when I have to do with African projects is the specialists talk to a specialist on it. So you have the electricity guys that talk to electricity guys. You have the water guys that talk to water people. So if we want to bring it together as an entire system, as integrated with a payment system, then I think blockchain could be a solution.
Blockchain in a village in Africa?
Well,
really?
if you have a solar mini grid, I mean, just take the example of Brooklyn, or the Brooklyn local energy market with blockchain.
No, this is different. This is different. These are highly developed areas, and
yes,
you know, complex.
But very often you see, I live in a country where after 20 years I needed to fill in a check. I was surprised. But France still works with checks. But nowadays, in lots of African countries, even in the farthest villages away, they pay with their telephone.
Exactly. That's what I say. But for the telephone, they don't need blockchain. They pay
but
with
let
their
me step in, gentlemen, please.
Yes,
Here,
because
Let's
it's
ask
your
a
topic.
specialist.
yeah. You see, I think you're all partly right here, or maybe you're not partly. And I want to completely agree with Roger and with his first statement. It's also you know, kind of the matter of maturity of the technology, because the end user, he doesn't want to know what it is inside, blockchain, some other chain, some artificial intelligence. He just wants to receive goods, services, and live better, right? And this is currently the challenge, which not only blockchain but other digital technologies must pass before the wider adoption, right? So it should be user-friendly, and it should be really clear and simple for the end user. And when these technologies will reach this level of maturity, we will definitely live in another world, and it will be definitely easy for anybody in the world to use it, pushing some simple buttons like on iPhone, right? iPhone was a revolution because there was only one button, right? So when the technology will mature at this level, then it will be widespread. And of course, for Africa, for developing countries, there is even more sense to deploy such technologies than even for developed world and northern countries, because of this trust problem, transparency, and so on.
But Alexei, please explain how you understand this, you know, because the essence of blockchain, and I'm an ignorant, complete ignorant, but the essence of blockchain is each participant has the full information about what happens with all other participants. And I think makes a lot of sense if you talk about electricity companies and whatever. But what sense does it make for a person in Africa to be able to know what hundreds of thousands of other people have in their electricity consumption and so on? You know, why are they even interested in this transparency? I mean,
I have a perspective.
An overkill. Yeah, Andrew, please.
I have a perspective here. PV is so cheap. It is in a sense too cheap.
Yeah.
I speak in a country that's got approaching 11 gigawatts of rooftop solar in a 25 million person country. This is, you know, 100 times more than in most countries per capita. And everyone just puts PV on the roof. A quarter of houses have got it now.
It's for nothing.
And they just put it on the roof and forget it.
Yeah.
A week after it's on the roof, they've forgotten they put it on the roof. And
that's what Roger says. Yes, exactly.
It's so cheap. It's so cheap. And
so I think blockchain, we don't want to argue anything about the value of blockchain technology in many transactions, but using it for PV, where the sun is shining and providing you electricity without any additional cost, to make elaborate financial systems to be able to pay these tiny amounts which are then left over, I really doubt it as well. I think this is an open question. Roger, you wanted to intervene? Yeah.
Yes, I see maybe a place where blockchain or similar technology could be useful. It's for carbon capture and removal, not for the centralized project with removal carbon from a central source and putting it in the ground, pressing it in the ground. This is not, but for the decentralized ones, for example, wood burial or improving the soil, the different storing wood, basically, instead of burning it or letting it decompose. And for such a project, there is a huge trust problem on the long run, that it's effectively a long run removal.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe if we have enough energy, if the global warming become acute, it's probable, maybe there will be some forces for finance long-term ecological carbon capture. And those projects are decentralized. And maybe there, the fact that you can really document on every square meter where the soil did enhanced, where in which former carbon mine you put wood in it store like this. Maybe this could be a way to be transparent. We have actually a huge lack of transparency on the carbon on the compensation market. Compensation, it's like I say in German, Ablasshandel. I don't know how to use it
Yes,
in English.
Yes.
But anyway, it could be interesting for such thing. On there, it's a more value and it's a long run problem. But for short run trading of micro quantity of electricity, I think that the computing, the need of electricity for computing is higher than the quantity of electricity you trade. And this is not very useful. And we have for this, we don't have a finance problem. For carbon removal, we have a problem of finance.
This is a very interesting suggestion. Alexei, have you ever anything to do with carbon, keeping track of what happens with carbon emissions? Is that something which ever crossed your path?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. From the very beginning, it was one of the original initial ideas to implement blockchain for this purpose. And then when we made more R&D, we realized that it's even broader and broader. But of course, we cannot cover everything. And I'm sending you another link to the Energy Web Foundation, where you can find more examples of how blockchain is used in the energy market. You can see that lots of big utilities have joined them, and they are doing this stuff in the energy sector. And for the off-grid energy, we need also this kind of solutions to finance, to invest in it, and maybe not the people. I think that the people both in developing countries really need it to control, for example, how the government deals with the energy prices and so on to provide more transparency, but also foreign investors. They really need to make sure what the effects their investments are making, and how this is all operates after they invest their sums of money. And it's obvious that they want to see the results in a more transparent way that can really prove that the impact is made and the energy is being produced, for example.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I think this was a very intensive discussion in this area of topics. I would love to use the opportunity that we have Andrew Blakers with us to come back to this really quite revolutionary proposal to use as a storage part of our Convergence of CleanTech technologies.